And they haven't, so we'll just go ahead now. So hello everybody, I'm Cormac Deane from the Institute of Art, Design, Technology. Are you looking at my PowerPoint here where you can read teaching with video essays?
No.
No. Okay, you will now in a sec. Sorry guys, this is our very first webinar, and for that reason there's going to be a few teething problems, so I hope you can bear with us. Present to everyone. Okay, can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay, right. So I'm going to talk about teaching video essays or teaching with video essays. It's a module that I've just taught for the first time in the semester past that ended at Christmas time. Let me just give you some of the context for this and then get into the details. What I'm really going to do is describe to you what I did with my group of students last semester. So let me just outline the context. I don't want to get bogged down in the details because it's not directly relevant, but it does explain a few of the decisions and things I did during those few months. So I want to, sorry, I'm in the wrong window. So to set some context, but by the way, Aaron and Shan, I'm relying on you two to tell me if things are looking weird or sounding weird. So the context was, it's an undergraduate year, third year group of about 45 students. Third year out of a 4-year BA in English, Media and Cultural Studies. So third year is an award year, and that's significant because their final degree grades are going to be partly influenced by the module that I taught. Now, the module title, as you can see, was Work, Employment and Society. It was a 1-semester module, it was a 5-credit module, and it was not a film module, and it was not a media module. Now, that's exclamation mark. That's a bit of an anomaly in the sense that usually, as this module was set up in a sort of slightly more standard fashion of where the continuous assessment, the CA, would have been a written assignment. But when it got into my hands, I am a film and media lecturer, and so I kind of molded it to my own ends. We also, in the Institute of Art, Design, Technology, in IADT, we also have a new BA in New Media Studies. And that's, well, it started this year, so the cohort of students will be coming to me in the next year or two. And we will be teaching video essays in a more direct way with them. So I needed to cut my own teeth and work out how to teach this stuff. But anyway, I'm pointing out that the module title is Work, Employment, Society. So you'll see those themes coming up in the course content that I show you now. Okay, I think a good thing to do is to start with what I'm calling the best in class. Now I'll show you extracts, short extracts from 2 video essays that the students in their subgroups submitted. The first is Frances White and David Quinlan. I'll show you 2-3 minutes of that, and the third is by these 3, Kieran Nolan, Linda Murphy and Laura Kane. Apart from these instances, I've anonymized everything else, but the students submitted everything into kind of public sites such as YouTube, and their names are attached to them there, so I'm not breaching any confidentiality by showing you their names here. Okay, I'm going to show you an extract, and I'm just going to hope, well, let me see actually if I can, where I can grab that extract. So, because the full screen isn't working, you've got to let me find the right screen. So I'm going to show you a couple of minutes of this. Right, 2 students. Can you see a black and white film still here? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's 2 students who did a kind of compare and contrast style essay, video essay on Ladri di Biciclette.
It's gone again. I think it was the full thing.
Thank you. Okay, is it there? No?
At the moment, no.
Okay, thanks for letting me know. I'll do it again. Every time I go to full screen, I lose my screen share. So you can see it there?
Yep.
Okay, we'll just have to watch it tiled, I'm afraid. And hopefully the sound will be okay there as well. So I'll show you a couple of minutes, and you can watch and listen. And this is the end product. These two that I'm going to show you are kind of among the best from the whole group. Okay, I'll hold it there. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, that was one example. I have another one, but I'm thinking maybe I'll save that to the end instead of just having us kind of sit quietly watching things. But while we're in this window, I just draw your attention to this material down here. This is the name of the student. This is a kind of a disclaimer, it's for study purposes only, and sort of bibliographical, filmographical information down here. And that was part of the exercise, was this kind of material here. Can you see my mouse moving? It was a required part of the assignment. Okay, so let me get back to the PowerPoint. Screen share. Okay, so are we back in the PowerPoint, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was best in class. I'll skip the other one. I'll come back to it. I'm a little bit aware that we might run out of time, and I don't want to do that. So, okay, let me just give you then a view of what the module content was. Now, there's I'm afraid there's a good bit of text in the screens to come, but please don't try and read it all as I'm speaking to you. I'll try and draw your attention to what I think is important. But what I want to do here is show you, I'm in the wrong window, is show you I know this is small because of the window, I'm sorry, so I'll read this, but this is the module content, week 1, week 2, week 3, and so on. I'm just indicating to you that, for example, the first lecture was Industrial Capitalism 1, Smith and Marx, Industrial Capitalism 2, Durkheim, Weber, Taylor. So this is not material that in any obvious way lends itself to film analysis. But throughout this module, I was saying to the student, they knew from the minute go, you're not writing an essay, you're doing a video essay. You have to find sources, film or TV or any other sources, moving image sources, that will demonstrate or exemplify an argument that you want to make based on the course content. So, of course, post-industrial capitalism, and so we got into globalization, immaterial labor, robotics, so it wasn't sort of only historical, so to speak. This is the end of the course here, modernism and modernity. Non-human labor, service-dominant logic, these may or may not mean things to you, accelerationism, so it got into the extremely present as we got to the end. So that's the context of what the module was about. Now, the first thing I had to do was do a skills survey for the students. So this is a questionnaire I handed around. So what I needed to do was I had a group of 45 students in three seminar groups of 15 each. So I would meet the whole group for 2 hours a week, and I would meet each subgroup, each seminar group for an hour a week. Each group of 15 was then broken down, roughly speaking, into 5 groups of 3. And so each set of 3 people then had to, as a group, produce a video essay. The module started in September. They had to submit it in the sort of first week after the Christmas holidays, so the beginning of January. So in order to break them up into groups and to make sure that I didn't clump people in an unfair way, I had to find out what they were any good at. So students would fill in their name. Do you have a laptop? Now, you have to ask these questions sometimes to kind of, you can't assume that every student has a laptop, especially if you teach in an institute of technology. The sort of socioeconomic bracket is not the same necessarily as you get in university. I wasn't looking for yes/no answers. I was looking for answers along a kind of scale. So, for example, you can see here, if you have an access to a laptop for half the time, enter 5. So 1 means yes, 10 means no. And if you have access to a laptop, 2 days a week, we'll then put in a 2 or 3, and so on. Do you have a microphone? Have you ever made a voice recording? Do you have editing software experience, voice training, acting, singing, whatever? Have you ever downloaded a film via torrent? Do you have internet at home? And what I'm Gaelga Agat, Chat my Beidir Gmiach group as Gaelga, in the end there wasn't, but I was kind of seeing if that could happen. Are you a technophobe? Some of them put in a big fat 10. Or excuse me, a 1 rather. Have you ever ripped a DVD? So just to find out what are their basic skills in gathering audiovisual material and putting it together. So if somebody kind of was scoring quite highly in this self-assessment skills survey in the technical department, then I would have to make sure that I didn't pair that person up with another person who was also good at that, because you'd sort of be wasting that skill set by putting 2 out of 3 people in a certain subgroup with those skills. So this is a way of kind of hopefully balancing the groups. And then on the whole, it worked out that the subgroups were relatively kind of, the skill set was relatively evenly distributed, I like to think. Students had no choice whatsoever in joining whichever subgroup they wanted. Okay, so what is a video essay? Can you see that? Yeah. Okay, so there are 3 sentences in this here. This extract here is from the assessment outline that I gave them. What is a video essay? The possible answers to this question will be explored in seminars throughout the module starting week 4, when we will start looking in detail at individual video essays. And I'll show you what that exactly entailed in a minute. But the brief definition is like a written essay, which the students, now third-year students, will have a decent grasp of what's demanded in an undergraduate written essay. Like a written essay, a video essay is an analytic piece of work on a defined theme that demonstrates research and understanding of a stated main theme or set of themes. So it's an essay. A video essay is an essay. It uses different material. It's a different output, but the work, the kind of the intellectual, analytic, research work that is expected of a student is not precisely the same, but it's comparable to what you would expect in a written essay. And in the case of my students in this module, the theme of the video essay will be drawn from any aspect of this course content. Okay, so that first sentence again, the possible answers to this question will be explored in seminars. So what I did was, starting in week 4, so we did some of the kind of course content to start with in a kind of more, relatively kind of classical way that you would. Then when we got to week 4, each subgroup, so each set of 3 people who were destined to make their own video essay as a group of 3, was assigned a video essay from a list that I compiled. And I compiled a list, and I can share that list with you, and there's a link at the end of all of this. They were assigned a certain video essay, which they then had to watch in detail, come into class, into the seminar the next week and say, this is the one we were assigned, this is what it's like, and they had to kind of go through a checklist of features. So let me move ahead and show you. So these are some of the video essay samples. I know that the screen is very small here because I can't do the large screen, but you can see here, Group A, the red group, had to do this video essay. These are just links, but oh, sorry, there's the title, The Spielberg Touchscreen. The next week, this purple group did opening movements in OFOs, another video essay, and so on and so on and so on. Group B had a red group, a purple group, a green group, and so on. Okay, so what were they doing when they watched those video essays? This is what they were instructed to do. The presentation would be approximately 15 minutes long. Any clip or clips from your video essay may not be longer than 3 minutes. Okay, the task that students had, and this is before they actually do their own video essay, the task is to describe and assess the video essay you've been assigned to the rest of the group, taking into account aesthetic, style, argument, thesis, tone, mood, style of narration, attention to formal elements of film, as in, close up or dissolve or color saturation or speed of cutting or whatever it is. Techniques employed that you may use in your own video essay, techniques employed that you will not use, scholarly content, and how detailed information is conveyed. Now, the range of video essays, in your own time, if you're interested, you can look at the list that I gave the students. The range of video essays it goes from the very scholarly to the very kind of clickbaity. So some of them will have 0 scholarly content, and some of them will have quite a lot. And so I was trying to expose them to as much a range as I could. Some of them have a very kind of dominant voiceover, very kind of, voice of God sort of mood and tone to them, where an argument is very kind of explicitly expressed. Others have no voiceover, don't even have text on screen. So I was offering them a range, and so each subgroup rather, then was kind of telling the other subgroups in the seminar sessions, well, this is what this is like, this is what we like, this is what we don't like. And so that kind of, so by the end of, by the time we got from week 4 to about week 12, they had all watched each other's video essays and had all been talking about them for about 6 weeks. And by the time we got to that part of the term, they all had a fairly good idea of what the range of possibilities are inside the form of video essay. So, excuse me, in the assessment assessment criteria that I gave them a list of what I called essential features that every video essay must have. So it's like this checklist that they had to go through, this is another checklist. So your video essay must, and these are things that, and I'll show you in a minute the feedback sheets, but the feedback sheets essentially reproduce this list. Did your video essay have a meaningful title and possibly subtitle? contain some consistent form of narration, present clearly an argument or thesis that reaches some kind of conclusion. And you'll notice also that some of these are simply criteria that you would have for any essay, written or otherwise. This, for example, present clearly an argument or thesis that reaches some kind of conclusion. That's what you expect of any assignment from any undergraduate student, or any graduate student for that matter. So some of these are specific for video essays, and some of them are rather different. Pay explicit attention to formal features of screen texts. Be accurate in, your essay must be accurate in its claims and assertions. It must present relevant material only. It must have an aesthetic style that is both pleasing and watchable. It must indicate titles of films, books, etc. So that's something that I kind of insisted must be in this, because they were doing a scholarly video essay. They weren't allowed to do one in the non-scholarly style. It must contain an attribute, to detailed references to scholarly or historical sources, and then it must be properly posted, described, and annotated in the way that I showed you with the Ladri di Bicicletti video essay. Basically, they have to say who they are, what they're doing, what the context of what they're doing is, and basically not put in sort of, some kind of joke name and everything in lower caps and no grammar and no anything. And just, it has to be kind of proper, in the same way that written work has to be properly presented in some kind of, respectable fashion. Okay, so this list, and I'm going to skim through the next couple of slides, but this list basically gets transferred then. This is what I asked them to do, and it gets transferred into their feedback sheet. Now, I know this is too small. I'll give you more detail on this in the next slide. But this is a group video essay feedback sheet. So it's, as you can see, it's got 3 boxes: basics, argument, and execution. So here's basics. So was it submitted on time and as specified in the outline? Was it, oh sorry, I should have mentioned this, was it 7 to 12 minutes in length? That was the fundamental sort of time limit that I set. Was it properly posted, and so on? Did it have a meaningful title and possibly subtitle? Now, I pre-filled my feedback sheet with yes, 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 because practically every group did the basics basically fine, but some of them didn't. So then a grade was assigned for that. Moving on to the next argument. Did it contain some consistent form of narration? Is it an analytic piece of work that demonstrates research and understanding of a stated main theme or a set of themes? And again, it's that exact phrase that was in what I asked them to do in the first place. Did it present clearly an argument or a thesis that reaches some kind of conclusion? And does it have an aesthetic style that is pleasing, watchable, listenable, and clear? And then a grade for that. And then execution. Is it accurate in its claims and assertions? Is it explicit? Does it give explicit attention to formal features of screen text? Does it present relevant material only? Does it indicate titles of films and books? Does it contain an attribute at least 2 detailed sources? 2 detailed reference article sources, and a grade for that. So each group got a grade. The 3 boxes I've just shown you were evenly weighted. And so a single grade was assigned to each video essay. So each subgroup of 3 students who produced a video essay got exactly the same grade for that component of their assessment. This is how it broke down. So 10% of any student's mark was given for attendance and participation, which is standard operating procedure in my institution anyway. 60% was a group mark for the video essay, and 30% was an individual mark for supporting documents, written documents, which I'll talk about now in a minute. And that was an individual mark. So the reasoning here was that because it's an award year, or especially because it's an award year, many students, especially the stronger ones, get a bit anxious that they'll sort of be dragged down a bit by people in their group who are sort of slacking or coasting or whatever it might be. And it does happen a wee bit. So it did work out that some students in this group got higher grades than they're really used to, because they were lucky enough to be with students who did well. So to mitigate that somewhat, 30% of it was devoted to submitting written documents for which they got an individual mark. And those supporting documents, I should give you details now in a minute, are kind of reflective of the process that they went through in doing the video essay. It was the word count for those supporting documents was very low. It was initially it was 1,000 words, but basically it was 700 words for the entire written assignment at the end. And the reason I did that was because really the video essay itself was really quite an onerous task for a lot of them. And I wanted to make it possible for individuals to clock up a lot of kind of cheap marks if they could, so to speak, by doing the 700-word assignment well. And you'd be, well, I don't know, I'm always surprised by students, but you'd be surprised how many of them just frittered away their grade by not really doing this tiny 700-word assignment properly. So you don't need to read all of this, but the supporting documents had two parts. One was background and research. So this is devoted to the background planning and research for your video essay. It explains the decision. Sorry, I moved that. It explains the decision-making process that led to the video essay that you've produced, why certain methods of presentation. So, we used a voiceover because we didn't use a voiceover because we chose, women in the workplace in the United States in 1950s films because, and so just explaining what your kind of thinking was in your background and your research work. It can also contain technical information. Oh, excuse me, sorry. And then part two, these two parts are equally weighted. This contains a scholarly presentation of the thesis or argument in your video essay. So basically, you condense your argument into words. And it should include bibliography, filmography. So it's like a miniature essay, written essay that reflects the overall essay, the video essay. And then so these requirements map on directly to the feedback sheet. I'm going to make all of these documents available to whoever is interested if they want to use them and alter them and so on. So, they'll be available. So you are graded, sentence by sentence from this previous document that gets transferred into this. And so the students knew exactly what they had to do. It's a checklist, you go through it and you get your grade. Okay, so it's 13:38. I'm going to start wrapping up. The resources that I can make available now, I don't want to click through these because maybe I'll go to. Okay, what I'll do is these are the kind of key resources I made available to the students. So what I'm going to do is show you what they were online because they were all links to different sites. Start screen share. Okay, so can you guys now see a Firefox window with lots of tabs? Yeah, I hope so. I've lost your voices. I can't hear you. Sorry. Oh, there you go. Okay, yeah. You can. Okay, yeah, good. Okay, okay. So one site I sent them to is the Labour Film Database. It's American. It's American and it's good. It's American, but it's good. There's a there's a list of categories here. So it's just a good resource for films and television in this specific, kind of subject area of work, employment, society. So that's a little bit maybe too specific for your uses. Another resource was, in my own personal YouTube/Google account, I created playlists. Now, these are things I use anyway in different contexts for teaching other modules. But this, for example, throughout the module, I had basically my own channel on YouTube, which the students could link to. And any clip or anything I showed them during the module was available in here. And it would start with the first one, Homer Simpson and economic analysis. But there's my list of things in work, employment, society. So I was showing them Charlie Chaplin in the factory, this kind of thing. Are you following me clicking around there? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. And then when students submitted things in their final assignments to YouTube, I put them all into this playlist here. and the one I showed you appears there. Other resources where, oh yeah, sorry, just as I did in YouTube, I also did in Vimeo. There's 12 videos in that. Vimeo is, it's a slightly different animal, but it was useful all the same. A good resource is Audiovisual C, an online forum for videographic film studies. I won't go into too much detail there, but it's worth kind of nosing around and finding out what's there. In transition, you're probably, a lot of you, familiar with this. If you go to their resources, there's a lot of stuff here, a lot of scholarly stuff, Raymond Ballure on the unattainable text, that kind of thing. But if you go to this practicalities, the last part of this section, you get a lot of kind of how-to tutorial type things, downloading audiovisual content. These are very slightly outdated, but they basically are still good. So that first one, Guide A, is in this tab. And so it tells you whether you're Mac or PC, what kinds of things you can use. So that's really basic stuff. It's useful enough. Film Scalpel is another thing, another site that I sent students to. It's a bit less practical, but it's still good. And then finally, there's also like a really simple thing to do that you sort of need to tell students is, if you're using, say, iMovie, which a lot of them did, and you have an issue, you just Google search your issue. So you Google search iMovie, how to import sound files, and it gives you these hits. And you can have, sorry, my Google's in Irish here, but so Fichon is video. So your video results from that will give you, like, somebody in some tutorial giving you 1 minute, and some of them are better than others, you have to fish around. But it's a really simple way of kind of meeting, whenever you meet any specific obstacle in your editing process, you go there, you find out a solution, and then you go back. And so it's a kind of it's a learning by doing. It's very kind of practical, need to know basis of how to do stuff with audiovisual editing software. The students I teach aren't particularly, it's not really part of their training to have learned this in any formal way, so they're learning it very informally. And frankly, I think it's kind of a more realistic way to do it, because almost anyone I know of who's ever worked in any media industry is improperly trained, or doesn't know everything about the software they're using, or their computer doesn't work, or there's always a problem, there's always some deficiency. And I think that actually kind of makes for a kind of a real world scenario. The students, I think about 80% of them use their own resources, their own computers. Some of them use computers that are available in the college, but not many. Okay, so I think I've kind of reached the end of what I wanted to talk about. It's 13:43 now. Let me just go back to my PowerPoint and see if there's anything else. No, I've kind of reached the end of what I wanted to show you there. I'm going to go back to that shared screen, the PowerPoint of resources. And there it is. So all those links there were what I just showed you, tab by tab. Thank God I lined them up before. Okay, so that's kind of, I could wrap up there if you want. I could talk about, I could show you that other video essay, best in class example.
I've actually got another meeting I have to be at in 10 minutes.
Okay.
But this has been fantastically interesting, just to see how you sort of set this up within a module where they weren't particularly skilled. They didn't necessarily have those skills already.
Yeah, I mean, there is well, thanks for your compliment. I kind of, when people say, oh, well, all these students are 21 basically, and when people say, oh, well, 21-year-olds know how to, do, everything online because they're constantly in contact with screens and all that, there is a certain amount of truth in that, but there's also, at least in the students I get who are doing English and media and cultural studies, like the ones who are doing English and cultural studies might be more interested in poetry or in some other kind of non-technical set of tasks. So they are it's a bit of a throwaway truism to say, oh well, because of their age they can all do it. So I think that was kind of one of the things I had to kind of be careful about, is like not sort of, because Sian, what you just said was like students who aren't trained in this, you know, so what I had to try and do was make sure with that skills analysis at the start to try and pair people or group people together in some way, and then that they could learn as they went along through the weeks of watching other people talking about video essays. Anyway, do you, Sian, if you need to go?
Yes, no, thank you so much. It's been really, really interesting, and good to see you, Aaron, and I shall be in touch soon. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll see you soon. Thanks. Good to see you, Sian.
Bye.
Bye, Sian.
Can I ask you a quick question while we're still on the feed? What was the, like, did you talk with them at all about the sort of real world or academic applications of these skills afterwards, either in sense of like submitting it to Audiovisual C or in translation or something else, or talking about how these skills might translate, you know, to employability and things like that? So was this just a task within the class, or was there some discussion with them about what to do with what they had created?
Excuse me. As we all know, the modules that we teach all have these you know, learning outcomes,
right,
as they're called, and so the learning outcomes that define the module that I'm talking about here, Work Employment Society, did not specify that the students would learn, you know, video editing techniques. But the learning outcomes are often kind of broadly enough phrased that it'll be something, you know, an output will be something along the lines of, you know, that students will be able to articulate and analyze and that kind of thing. So I interpreted those parameters to suit what I was aiming to do. So and you know, I can defend the position that I took, saying, well, now these students are articulating things or analyzing things. They're, you know, they're performing these kind of intellectual tasks where they are expressing themselves. So all of those things that they can do now as a result of this are arguably as valuable as the writing skills that they would have gained if they had done a sort of more classical written assignment. So no, I didn't actually get into the specifics of, you know, you could, you know, do your own CV, or you could do a webinar or something like that. But I think there is, especially actually given the content of the course, which is Work Employment Society, there was a lot of talk about automation and about screen work and about the sort of dashboardification of everything, and you know, online presences dominating work environments. And so that kind of was something that was kind of a through line in the course content, that you need to know this stuff. I just got a message which I'm ignoring. Sorry, it's from a different piece of software. And
what was their sort of, did they know coming into the class that this was going to be a big component of the assessment, or did they find out, you know, on day one when they got the syllabus? And what was their sort of reaction to this, what to them probably seemed like a non-traditional form of assessment? Did they get that this was good for them, or did they rise to the challenge, or whatever else you might say about that?
They didn't know until they had me standing in front of them. But that cohort knew me because I had them for a different module last year and in their second year, and in that other module, it was a very kind of audio-visual based set of tasks also. So they were used to me shepherding them through kind of technical tasks. Mm-hmm. And so that at least kind of made it slightly more less strange to them, you know, because I'd done it with them before, and so the process of group work and all of that was something that they'd gone through before. And actually, I mean, an important component of all of this is, you know, is the kind of personal dynamics of being in a group. And what do you do as a student if you're in a group and somebody else is slacking or just, you know, taking the piss? How do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with it personally, but how do you actually deal with it? How do you speak to that person? And so there are kind of inherited from the year before, there were kind of ways that we kind of established about basically how to complain about people without actually fighting, without bullying. And so one of the things that those written assignments were designed for was for people to kind of vent there. And one of the best, so that's kind of part of it. I think there does need to be some kind of valve, and especially when it's an award year, students, you know, rightly get sort of, they take it very seriously, you know, that this can kind of have long-term consequences. I'm trying to remember the specifics of what your question was there. So they didn't know when I arrived, until I arrived in, and they, a lot of them liked the idea of it because it wasn't another written assignment, not too many of them, and because the submission deadline was after Christmas. So it was after their other deadlines, it was after this exams, and so they could sort of long finger it, and that always, you know, appeals to them.
Right.
You know. Okay, we've got 4 viewers here still.
On YouTube?
Yeah, well, my Google Hangouts window is telling me that there are 4 viewers. Unless you have any questions, Aaron, what I think I could do is show the final clip. It's only 2 minutes. Let that play through, and then that's the end. Because you know, if somebody wants to stop watching now, they can. But I'm going to add this in, and people can just watch that for sort of for information. And then we'll have to work out. I suppose actually what I'll do is indicate to people where they can find this stuff. So what I'll do is I'll put up some links, or this, or whatever this PowerPoint demonstration was, and I'll put it on to. Let me just show people sort of live. Okay, so Irish Screen Studies is here. Let's give it a sec. So here's the webinar series. So this is what we're doing here. So somewhere in this space, there will be a couple of resources that I'll make available.
Right now I'm just seeing like your open Gmail box.
Oops. Oh, that's private. You've got password changed.
I guess it's the ISS one. Yeah.
So it is actually. So that means that's a Safari window. Is that a Safari window?
It's, I don't know. It has an inbox. Another inbox is blinking, and there's a live events YouTube. I don't see the browser name. It looks like Safari.
Okay. All right. So sorry about that. Has it got a blank screen now?
Nope. It's still that.
Now an open tab with an animal.
Yep.
Okay, so Irish Screen Studies. So I'm just showing once again, this is the homepage of Irish Screen Studies. There's the webinar series. So this is the event we're doing now. So in this space here, I'll make different bits and pieces available. People can write to the Irish Screen Studies at gmail.com address if they want to specifically ask me for something. And but the stuff will be, a lot of the stuff will be here anyway.
All right. We can put that in a link on the YouTube page also, maybe in the description of the event.
Okay. Yeah, good idea. And all right, well then what I'll do is I'll set up this last clip to play. It'll only be 2 minutes of a video essay, and and I don't think I'll come back after that. I'll sort of sign out now. Let me just find the right window. Sorry, I know it's tedious watching somebody else mousing around. Here we go, this one. This one. Okay, can you see Haku written there? Okay, so 4:11 is where I want to start. Okay, I'll let this play out, and I won't be back. So goodbye, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed it. And there'll be another webinar in about a month's time with Kira Chambers talking about archival